Previously. Hey, Butter Biscuit, Russia fought a war with the Ottomans, so now we're taking parts of Poland. You want some? And that's how George Washington survived the American Revolution. Happy Kazimierz Pułaski Day. Those of you living in Illinois, Wisconsin, Buffalo, New York, or Grand Rapids might be thinking to yourselves, wait, today isn't What they don't know can't hurt them. Back in its heyday, Poland used to be a big name in the European cool kids club. Everyone wanted to be like them, what with their unique political system and winged hussars and heliocentrism and whatnot. But oceans rise, empires fall, and Poland starts to drop the ball. See, the king of the Commonwealth was elected, but much like a certain Austrian family happened to control the HRE for a few centuries, the process wasn't wholly democratic. Only in this case, it wasn't just a particular family within the empire calling the shots, but also the royal family of Russia. Come 1764, it's time to pick a new monarch. Naturally, Russia sinks a few million rubles into the election and stations its army a few miles away from the Polish parliament. Not that anyone besides their favorite had much hope, but just in case. To the new king's credit, he did his best to introduce reform, but the deck was stacked against him from the get-go. A number of Poles weren't terribly happy about this situation, Kazimierz included, so they took to arms before things could deteriorate. I mean, heaven forbid Russia should take full sovereignty. He and his mates in the Bar Confederation actually met with moderate success for a while. I mean, Kazimierz himself got captured, but was released on the condition he pinky swear not to fight anymore and convince his friends to cut it out, and then he returned to fighting with his friends, and they met with moderate success. France lent them a hand, I can only imagine as a means of getting a finger in the Polish pot, and a simultaneous war with the Ottomans and an uprising in Ukraine kept Russia preoccupied. For a while, it looked like it could escalate into a full-on continental grudge match when the Confederation started talking about a coalition with France, Austria, and the Ottomans to stage a coordinated attack on Russia, but unfortunately, they just finished their regularly scheduled war of supremacy, and everyone knows you have to respect the balance of power for at least 25 years before lighting the keg again. So as it happened, Russia beat the Ottomans and the Haidamakas in Ukraine, and Austria joined Prussia in nibbling on the border. And so when Austria, Prussia, and Russia get to talking, they agree that now would be the best time for all of them to take a whole chunk of Poland. And when it came time to justify themselves, all they had to do was point to the Bar Confederation and go, look, anarchy. If they can't govern themselves, then we're governing for them. Kazimierz is forced to leave the country, so he takes refuge in France. He wants to use his military experience to sign up for the French army, but alas, they won't have him. If only there were a country in the late 18th century in dire need of seasoned generals, somewhere he could really stick it to those rotten European powers. Some place that claims to fight for liberty and justice for all. Enter Ben Franklin. He tells Pułaski there was an idea called the Continental Army. The idea was to bring together a group of remarkable people. See if they could become something more. See if they could work. I'm in. And without any connection to America whatsoever, he packs his things and sets sail. You could argue he just needed a job, of course, but as you'll see, his economic benefit from all this was pretty minimal. Plus, he wrote a very sweet letter to Washington about defending liberty, just an upstanding guy overall. When he gets to America, he makes it his duty to convince everyone how much cooler and better cavalry is than walking around on foot by showing off some stunts outside Philly. And in his very first battle, he gets to show off some more. The British are closing in, Washington and his bodyguards are making a retreat, but they're almost cut off when Kazimierz Pułaski pulls together enough stragglers to charge in and save the day. Washington, suitably impressed with his life being saved, sets him up as a brigadier general of the American cavalry, and he begins whipping them into shape. The rest of the war would obviously turn out in favor of the US, but for Kazimierz, he had nowhere to go but down. Morale among his soldiers wasn't the best. They weren't thrilled about taking orders in broken English from some European aristocrat with no ties to the land, and it certainly didn't help that he wasn't getting the money he needed to pay them properly, much less create that Lancer unit he wanted. At one point, it got so bad that one of his malcontents defected and helped the British get the jump on them while they were sleeping. Following that mishap, Kazimierz was sent away from the fight against the British to go smash the Iroquois Confederation. At first he thought about packing up and going back to Europe, but decided instead that he'd rather fight on the southern front. There he decides to help clear out Savannah and show off a little more. Once again, the British start closing in, and once again, Kazimierz Pułaski rallies his fleeing allies and... Oh yeah, this time he gets shot and killed. The weird thing is, somehow no one knows 100% where he ended up getting buried. Not sure how that happened. Anywho, like, subscribe, all that jazz if you want to. See you next time.